Hey, what's up you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you my weekly review of Van Helsing on Syfy. This week's episode was Season 1, Episode 5, Fear Her. And before we get into the episode, I did want to mention that Syfy has already renewed Van Helsing for a Season 2, which is going to be coming next year, of course, with them likely filming around January. Very excited about this. I'll probably do a video on its own talking about the renewal and also why you should be watching the hell out of this show, because it's really an awesome one so far. In this episode, I really liked it, probably just as much, if not more, than last week's episode. We had a very emotional and sort of, somewhat surprising reunion with Vanessa and Susan. And brought about a few more clues to the whereabouts of Dylan, Vanessa's daughter. Then of course we also had more dissension among the rest of the survivors out of the bunker. Of course, with the other survivors being brought in by Muhammad, it created quite a few more problems early on than I expected. But then again, it's the kind of world they're in, but we'll talk more about it as we get into the video. Of course, we open with Vanessa being brought to Julius, having that Hannibal Lecter type of mask over her mouth anyway, because they do fear her. We see the vampires sort of cowering as she's being pushed to Julius and such like that. Even Julius, he does show strength, among his minions. He does show that he definitely is the alpha male among this group of them anyway. But at the same time, even Julius was a little bit cautious around Vanessa here. And I really liked Kelly Overton's performance here. I've really liked her so far, but this was probably one of her most defining moments, was this scene and the follow-up with the little fight we got between her and Susan, who is a vampire at this point. But Vanessa sort of dares Julius to taste her, just knowing what it does, and sort of like playing into the way they're all looking at her, really, which I think is pretty clever on her part. Julius essentially wants to use her as a way to get to Dimitri. He thinks that Vanessa will lead him to Rebecca will lead him to Dimitri, and then he wants Dimitri's head. I'm still curious to see how this power play is actually going to play, pan out between the vampires here. Rebecca also got a little bit more interesting in this episode too. I've already really liked the feel when she's on screen, but we're seeing more character depth with her, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. We see Dimitri. He's basically feeding with this other vampire named Anastasia. Apparently it might be his sister, which is Game of Thrones does it all the time, so what's it matter, right? But it was still eerily creepy, but yet kind of fun scene in a way, I guess. Basically, Dimitri and Anastasia are feeding off of each other. They don't really gain any sustenance from it, but it does bring them some form of pleasure, I suppose. You've seen this in other vampire stories. I particularly remember it from Being Human with Aiden and Rebecca and stuff. So it's kind of fun to see that sort of element being a factor with this world's vampires as well. And then of course Dimitri has told Julius's message about having Vanessa. He does seem curious, and it's definitely going to be something when we see Vanessa and Dimitri meet for sure, which I'm sure will be happening eventually this season. And of course, with the new people at the bunker, the food's dwindling down even faster than before. Of course, because as Brendan explains it, they haven't seen that in a long time. They haven't felt safe at all anywhere. They haven't really seen that much food, and probably since before the apocalypse began. And so when they see that, they sort of just start having a feast of their own, really. And of course Axel's upset over this. He didn't want to take in the survivors anyway, and he just has to try and get back into this rations mindset and such. Julius, back at his lair, he does want to end up testing Vanessa's blood. Of course, he's not going to try it himself, and so he does ask for a volunteer, a brave one, to step up and show them what they're made of, basically. And then, of course, that's when we seen Susan come out of the crowd, now a vampire. And she made a pretty, creepy, bitchy vampire. I'll say that. I like the actress playing her as well. Hillary does a very good job, as does the whole cast. And, I sort of felt that we would see Susan again in the present day, because if you do go on the Syfy website, you can see the whole cast, and we did see her as a human. Include her in that collage I made a while ago, which you can view on my Facebook page, and I sent it all around Twitter and such. I again want to commend the cast of Van Helsing, as well as the writers, for being so interactive on Twitter. It's really a pleasure and really cool of them to communicate back and forth with me, and I'm sure others, the way they do on Twitter. It makes them come across all the more caring about their fans and the viewers they're getting and such. I've even talked to one of the main vampires on the show, or at least one of Julius's right hands, or one that I realize on quite a bit. He's a pretty awesome guy. But yeah, so Julius does want to test, see what would actually happen once one of them, feeds from Vanessa. And this led to actually a pretty cool little fight scene between Vanessa and Susan as a vampire. I'll talk more about that in a second. And the guy's name, by the way, who plays Scab, is Roland Pelambunny. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, man. I'm just terrible at that sometimes. But yeah, again, thank you for the talks on Twitter and such. It's really, really cool of you guys. But anyway, yeah, the fight scene is pretty awesome, I gotta say. I really like the choreography to it. It felt natural, and it really sort of established Vanessa as the way we're supposed to see her, I think. Before, in the previous episodes, we've seen, badass moments from Vanessa, already, but, she is also so shaken and sort of still getting used to this world she's in, at the same time being panicked and desperate about finding her daughter, of course. But we've seen her fight Susan here, and Vanessa actually wins. She legitimately beats a vampire hand to hand, so I thought that was pretty cool. Granted, Susan wasn't, like Julius, or definitely not Dimitri or Rebecca level, but still it says something, because Susan would have the advantage of her, enhanced strength and such, but Vanessa does pull it off here. And she actually does a pretty cool move on Susan's arm, which I thought was pretty brutal. But the best part is when Vanessa, of course, bites Susan. But throughout that, though, we see that Susan, says, "Oh yeah, I killed your daughter, I drained her." But then Vanessa ends up biting Susan, and I just really love the look of blood and the way Kelly Overton acts it out when she does that. It's really, really cool to see her in that mode, just really, really strong person, and I just enjoy the hell out of it. And this really makes an example, for the rest of them. Even Julius is pretty shocked by her doing that, and this does turn Susan back into a human, which I'm of course happy about. I like that we can sort of still have that tie back to the past, when they were both happy. So we have that history there, and it's good to have that friend dynamic on the show, I think. And of course, Vanessa sort of dares all of them to come at her, and she uses this as an attempt to flee. Her and Susan run off, and we hear from Susan later that she didn't kill Dylan. That she remembers. That was just the vampire side of her being a bitch and trying to get into Vanessa's head. And she sort of does recount Dylan coming to her door, though, right after the attack. Just how shaken she was. How she could barely talk. Of course, just seeing her mom seemingly bleed out and die in front of her. And Susan remembers taking her in and keeping her in her apartment until a cop showed up. The dad said he would be on his way. We don't know what happened to him. I'd imagine we might see him maybe turned later on, or maybe used as a as a slave or someone hanging in a closet. I don't know how we'll see him later, but maybe we will. But this is a very good scene. Again, I just really like the bonding between Vanessa and Susan. I'm glad they brought that dynamic into the present day apocalypse world they're in. Very good acting from both Kelly Overton and Hillary, again, as I mentioned earlier. Let's see. Of course, Susan does carry a lot of blame on herself, not only from the Dylan stuff, but also just she does remember everything she did as a vampire, and it just weighs on her. She said she still deserves to be left there. And then we back at the headquarters. I shouldn't say headquarters, the main layer with Dimitri and such. Rebecca ends up, finding the girl in the vents. He pulls, she pulls her out. It was pretty badass. She just, punched a hole through the wall and just threw her on the bed. So that was awesome. And she ends up letting her go, though. She goes through all the things she could do to her, experiment on her, just kill her, or just, throw her to the wolves, basically. But she ends up letting her go. And again, I think it's almost part of perhaps Rebecca's sort of weird fascination she just still does have with humans. Just in last week's episode, the way she's looking at that human as she was having sex with her lover in a way before she of course cut his throat and such. It seems like she does have this weird connection that she doesn't really want to let go of to humanity. Maybe, I don't know, but definitely gives Rebecca room to maybe make a different choice later. I don't know how far that's gonna go. I might be too optimistic here, but it definitely gives her character a little more depth, and I like that a lot. Let's see, of course, back to the bunker, people aren't feeling safe. They're helping to find the resistance, and so apparently there is this bigger resistance out there. Either that, or they're referring to the people back at the main layer, but we'll see. But there has to be another big group out there somewhere, right? I don't know. It's just speculating, but... And, of course, Doc was operating on this patient that's brought in from outside, and he ends up dying. But we find out that the killer must have got to him. He took his finger and such, and of course that just causes all the shit to hit the fan. And John actually, turns on Axel and the others, and he helps Brendan and the other girls take control. And of course Axel and the others are locked in the room, and they just want to find out who the killer is, and they don't trust any of them anymore. And things quickly turn. Brendan seemed to be a pretty good guy, and I understand his concern to take care of his people, especially with the killer there. But yeah, things didn't really last with this setup, did they? Of course, John ends up being locked in too, which I think was pretty funny. He was pretty high on himself, for helping to convince Brendan to do this, and he just ends up getting locked in there as well. And again, who do I think the killer is? I think it could be John, is very possible. I think Flesh is also another likely one, because he is starting to almost think about it himself. It seems like he's worried about something, that maybe the vampire's still in his head a little bit, or there's something still going on in his body. I don't know. But that would be an interesting dynamic to explore. We still don't really know if there's any effects still carried over after someone has turned back. We don't know if there's any of that vampire left in them. So I'm curious to see or hear more about that. Muhammad, he sort of confesses, and then he's exiled from the bunker. And it was actually pretty sad, because Sam seems very, of course, is very attached to the kid, and they sort of say goodbye in their own way. And of course we know Muhammad probably didn't do it, but Axel already tried to sort of take the blame just to save the others, and Muhammad did the same here. So Muhammad is exiled. He's sent out into the waste of Seattle with no weapons, but I'm pretty sure Muhammad will survive. Maybe he'll meet up with Vanessa and Susan. That'd be cool. But Muhammad's a character I like quite a bit, and I think he'll be all right. He's sort of like our Glenn of Van Helsing, because he just knows how to navigate the city so well and such, and he's a pretty capable guy physically, really, too. And then of course we have the vampire stalking Vanessa and Susan through the tunnels, and for some reason Julius and the others seem cautious to go in there. We don't know why. I felt like there's probably something in there, but Julius is like this intimidating as hell, almost ancient level vampire, so what would be in there that he'd even be cautious to run into? And we see a little bit of a tease of that at the end of the episode. But he sends a Scab and another vampire in there after him, and the other vampire that was with Scab gets picked off very quickly. Scab keeps going though. And again, we have that scene of Susan telling Vanessa about Dylan, and again, just a very good scene, well acted, from both actresses. And we see these glowing eyes, slowly approaching, and it appears that Vanessa can sort of see in the dark a little bit better than humans can, which is another cool little ability, sort of in her because of what she is. So I'm curious to see if she has any other powers to some extent. Maybe I don't want to get too over the top, but it's still kind of awesome. But yeah, we see these glowing eyes, and of course they run off, and the thing quickly darts after them. And based on what we've seen in the previews, it looks like it's some kind of like weird, feral, mutant vampire type of thing. I don't know. I mean, we've seen what ferals are like. We had this one in a chain, sort of basically like a dog that Julius sent after him, but this thing appears to be even further gone. It looks very cool though, very creepy, and I definitely got a rush when it went after him at the end of the episode. So next week's episode should be very good, very intense as they deal with this thing all trying to escape through the tunnel. And also, something I was really curious about seeing in the preview is that it looks like we're going to be introducing another prominent vampire, and almost resemble Dylan. So I don't know, maybe I didn't really see it the right way. But still, nonetheless, very good episode. Next week's episode should be very intense, just as it always is. I'm going to give this episode about an 8.8, 8.9 out of 10, just as good as last week's, if not better. And I really have high hopes for the finale of the show, this season 2. I think it's just probably going to have an awesome, bloody as hell finale, and I can't wait. 5 episodes in, Van Helsing's already one of my favorites out there. I'm very happy with the show so far. I love the cast, love all the work with the effects, and both practical and CGI I think it looks great. It's really a special show, and please watch it. And like I said, I'm going to do my review on Z Nation and some other things later, but I'm going to do a video talking about the Season 2 renewal and just how much I love the show in general. So I'll catch you guys for a little bit later. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.